A new high school football season has arrived, which means the Midco Sports Game Ball and Top Performers lists are back. Big thanks again to our sponsors at Farmers Union Insurance, and another thank you goes to the coaches, the parents, the fans, and the players that have all been submitting nominees, especially this week, the opening week. We're proud of what this has turned into with so many kids getting that opportunity to get recognized. But I also want to make it clear, if you don't see your name on these lists, it doesn't mean you don't deserve to be. There are over 100 teams across the state and somewhere in the ballpark of about 3,000 to 4,000 kids playing high school football. We try our best to first off find and then to pick the top 10, and we know there's always going to be deserving players that get left off. It's just the way it is. And for you linemen that rarely get to see your name in the box score, I was once in your shoes as a former starting center. Keep grinding, baby. All right, I'll get off my soapbox. But on the same note, a couple of players that were worthy this week that didn't make the list but do deserve that shout out. There were about 4 players on North that were great in the week 1 win over Horace. I'm sure they'll be on this list soon enough. And Cruz Hernandez from Hankinson, well, he rushed for $150, scored twice, once on a 93-yard fumble strip and score, so good for him. Ben Shep tossed a trio of touchdowns for 𝗕𝗹𝗹 Garrison, and Cavalier, well, they have some studs every year, but they had some studs that balled out in that opening win over Northern Cass. Our game ball winner for this week, though, hails from Dickinson Trinity. More on Jace Kovash's spectacular debut in a bit. But let's go through our top performers list, sorted alphabetically. Nelson County junior quarterback Jackson Baumgarn made a splash in the season opening win over New Rockford-Cheyenne. Baumgarn passed for 200 yards and nearly rushed for 100 yards, combining for 4 touchdowns in the 36-22 win over New Rockford-Cheyenne. Baumgarn and running back Zach Gibson were terrific. Remember, Nelson County took an undefeated record in the state quarterfinal round last year? It looks like they're going to be good again. The same can be said for this team. Mayport CG senior Ethan Bergstrom picked up right where he left off last season, rushing for 122 yards and 3 scores and catching a trio of passes. He also made 10 tackles on defense and helping the Patriots storm past a good 𝗕𝗿𝗎𝗻𝗃 squad in the opener. Defending 6-man champ North Border returned to the 9-man ranks with a bang by squashing Benson County on Friday. Senior Carson Brown turned 11 carries into 170 yards and 3 scores, had a touchdown catch, and racked up a couple of tackles for loss in the victory. Shiloh's Jody Norstedt had the Skyhawks offense flying high against Ray Powers Lake in the opener. Norstedt completed 22 of 34 passes for 245 yards and 3 touchdowns. In addition, he rushed for 44 yards and 2 more scores in the 34-8 win. You don't see 34 passes in a high school game at that level too often, but Coach Barker clearly has a lot of trust in his senior quarterback, and rightfully so. Last year, Red River's Brett Feller rushed for a total of 62 yards in the season. In Friday's opener, he erupted for 216 yards and 4 touchdowns, the most rushing yards by a Rough Rider since 2001. Feller can hammer people with his 6'2", 205-pound frame. He waxed some Williston defenders pretty good in the opening night win. 4 wins rung in the new year with a win over 𝗕𝗭𝗋. 𝗕𝗿𝗄 touchdown had a 4-touchdown game with over 200 yards of offense. He's just a sophomore, but he's a tough young man. 4 wins in Nelson County will be a big showdown come Friday. Nicholas Mears from North Prairie picked up right where he left off last season when he combined for 26 touchdowns despite missing a few games with injury. Mears passed for 96 yards and 2 scores, rushed for 206 yards and 3 touchdowns, and then caught a touchdown pass on a trick play. All that plus an interception on defense to help the Cougars trump West Hope Newburgh Glenburn in the opener. Colton Ness has been on this list so much over the years, you'd think he's a sponsor. The Lemoore Litchfield Marion tight end and safety caught 5 passes and housed 4 of them for 122 yards. The defending state champs routed Maple River and now get Enderlin on Friday. I put the 2 Langdon players together because I couldn't choose between the 2, and thanks for the helmet, by the way. Jack Rumfo came in for an injured Carter Tatro and rushed for 180 yards and 3 scores while catching another. Meanwhile, second-year starting quarterback Race Worley really looked confident, completing 16 of his 25 passes for 222 yards and 4 touchdowns. For me, Langdon was the most impressive team on Friday night, defeating 5th-ranked Bishop Ryan 50-20. We finish off the list with a young man who is probably the runner-up this week, but I think a game ball is definitely in his future at some point. Thompson sophomore Jake Starcevic was an efficient passer, throwing for 128 yards and 2 scores. He also rushed for 145 yards and a trio of scores. He was unstoppable on defense too, with 3 tackles for loss, a sack, and an interception, a mouthful. The Tommies hammered Grafton in week 1, 54-0. As for our first game ball recipient of the 2022 season, that honor goes to Dickinson Trinity for junior quarterback Jace Kovash, who completed 15 of his 21 passes for 325 yards, yes, 325, and 5 touchdowns. Those video game numbers were put up against a very worthy opponent too. Des Lacs-Burlington won 8 games last year and had a very stingy defense. Kovash and the Titans, though, picked them apart on opening night in a 36-0 win. Share the game ball with your defense too, Jace, because the Titans allowed nothing to that Lakers offense. That's a wrap for this week's announcement. Make sure to tune in to Midco Sports on Friday night for our first live game broadcast of the season as Century visits West Fargo for a 7 p.m. kickoff. Then at 10:30, we debut our new look for Varsity Sports Live. We'll see you then.